De Ghanese Asante Waife reisde backpackend door Europa toen corona een streep door zijn reisplannen maakte. Nadat hij noodgedwongen enkele maanden vastzat in Polen, zit hij sinds 15 juni hier in de pastorie in Ubach. Aan Omroep Landgraaf vertelde hij zijn opmerkelijk verhaal.
Asante,
Yeah.
you traveled throughout Europe for several months before the corona crisis joined your travel throughout Europe.
That's correct.
Well, can you tell me what was that? How did you deal with it?
Okay, thank you for your question. Well, my initial plan was to cover as much of Europe as possible. And so I had hoped that within 17 or 18 months, I would be able to do this. And I wanted to start from the east. But unfortunately, the plan that I had changed. And so I first started, of course, I started with the Eastern Europe. I just had a change of plans because I rely exclusively on a budget traveling community called World Packers. And it's a community where we get work exchange. So we volunteer at places and then we get a free place to stay. So because of the inability to get more places at a time, my initial plan were changed. That has been so far. But in all this, Poland has been where I have spent most of my time. And I was there for almost 5 months before I managed to arrive in Netherlands.
How was that when you were in Poland and you realized that the entire world goes in lockdown?
It's a hard question, but I should say perhaps one of the best things to have happened to me was to have been stranded in Poland. Because in the midst of this pandemic, I got the best experience. And I couldn't even believe that despite the fact that the virus was being carried by travelers, there were still people in Poland who were offering to host me. And I was even scared for them, even old people. And so I could say that Poland has been the highlight of my travel, and it's the place that I have enjoyed most. I met good people, I had good experiences. I am a hitchhiker, and I rely exclusively on hitchhiking, and so I depend on the goodwill of drivers on the road. And it's Poland that I spent least time on the road. At any hitchhiking spot that I go, within few minutes, then I get drivers to stop. Even when they cannot even speak English with me, they just have the desire to help. And so that is all they think about. And so I really kept enjoying the hospitality of the people until the lockdown set in, and it was the most hard thing for me. I would like to share my last experience, if that is okay, because it really meant a lot for me. This was just a journey of about 150 kilometers. On average, I cover about 600 to 700 kilometers, depending on the weather. I had to walk about 10 kilometers because nobody would stop. I could stand, raise my hitchhiking sign and a thumb, but nobody stopped. So it was really hard for me. I spent a full day hitchhiking. I just got 2 offers, but these were short journeys that could not even take me to half my journey. And so I ended up at a village in the middle of nowhere I had no idea what to do. And the worst thing was that it was getting dark and my phone also went off. So this was really a difficult time for me, and it was in the middle of the pandemic where people were running away from travelers. And so I had to keep walking and walking for maybe I was thinking, okay, so I'm going to walk the entire night. Of course, I could even count on some help of people in different cities, but then this was a village, it was a country road where no commercial bus even ply through, so it was basically not going to be possible. I only needed the help of drivers, but nobody was willing to help me. And I wanted to charge my phone, so as I was walking, I entered some house in the village. Yeah, it was a strange thing for them, but nobody could open to me. So I left and went to the second house. But when I went to the second house, the funny thing was that it was quite late in the night, about 9 p.m., and I could see that there were people in the house, and the kitchen light was on, and a gentleman came to the kitchen and then peeped through the window and saw me standing there. I was thinking perhaps what he was going to his mind is, what is a black man doing in the middle of the night here? And so he just closed the curtain, turned off the lights, and then walked away. So I thought I was finished, because these were just scattered houses that I didn't want to go to the next house. But I was just standing there, asking myself what I could do. And then lucky for me, the occupants of the first house, they followed up. When they saw me go to the second house, they followed up, and so they came to me, and well, we couldn't speak to each other, but I just showed them a sign of my urgent need to charge my phone. And so they bid me follow them. They took me back to their house. And so when the gentleman who turned down on me saw that I was following them, or they came, and then he also joined us. So I got relieved, because for one thing, at least I could charge my phone. And apart from that, at least I could get people to speak with who could give me direction as to what to do. And then luckily for me, not only did they offer for me to charge my phone, but then it was more than that. They offered me food, water, and drinks, and it was a good time. And after this, when my battery was full, they offered to drive me to the nearest city where I could continue my journey. So after a good time with them, they drove me to the city. But then in the middle of their conversation, the woman told me that they decided that they dragged me back to their home for me to go and spend the night with them, because I tried to resist, because they didn't really like the idea, because this is in the middle of pandemic, and then also when they had no idea. They knew very little, if not nothing, about me, and I didn't want them to be scared at night. So I resisted their offer. I turned it down, but the woman insisted, because they were scared something might happen to me in the night. So they drove me back to the house, and then they offered me a place to sleep. In the morning I had a breakfast, and then they drove me back to the city, to the hitchhiking spot of that city. And luckily for me, in 5 minutes, I also got a ride, and I was going to Warsaw, the capital, and that was it. And so for me, this experience was the most important thing to me, because how people, they never knew me, and how they were prepared to take all the risk. It was something quite I couldn't believe, because this is rare. In my country, it's rare. It can never happen. And so it's really meant a lot for me. And after that, I was not able to continue my journey, because my plan was to move quickly to Paris. But then the borders closed, and so I couldn't. And in my travel community, people were sharing their terrible experiences and their inability to get hosts to stay with. And so I could just tell them how lucky I was, and the good people that I had who were taking good care of me. And so I was in good hands, despite the difficulties that the whole world was going through. It was okay, and until the borders opened, when I was able to travel from Poland to the Netherlands. So it's my first time in the Netherlands.
Did you think about traveling home?
During
try to get home when the pandemic started?
I did. Well, not necessarily traveling home, but I wanted to seek help from the consular office of my country in Poland. Yeah, but I tried, I sent emails, and I contacted them on several occasions, but because the office had been closed, and so I never received any help from them. So, and I was also following events at home. and the borders had already been closed, and so the idea of going home at that time was really not in my mind. But I just thought perhaps I could get some help from my consular office, but no help came. And even if there was ever any help, I'm sure there was no other help was more important than the help I received from the police people. They were so amazing. Even I was surprised how people were willing to take the risk to host me. It was something that I really didn't understand, but I could understand that people care so much about foreigners.
You were first in Poland and then you ended up in Landgraaf. How did that happen?
Okay, so originally my plan was, I had an arrangement with a hostel in The Hague, where I was planning to go and stay in April for about 1 month. And so that was the plan. And suddenly the pandemic reached its peak, and so the hostel canceled this arrangement. So I was heading for Brussels instead. And also it was not possible because it was getting hard to reach Brussels. And then I had an offer on a traveler community. So my mission was to try to experience life in another part of the world and then to engage the people. So I don't go the usual way of traveling, where you go to a city, okay, where are the tourist sites, you go and you visit the tourist site. That has not been my plan. My plan has been to engage more with the people, with the locals, and to experience life. So in most cases in Africa we have higher expectations of Europeans, but I really wanted to experience life the European way, to see how Europeans live. And this is really something that is rare, but I wanted to do it. And so I don't really care about it. What I care about is, of course, there may be racists who may not be willing to help, but one thing about hitchhiking is that regardless of how long you stand at a spot, there will always be that one good driver who will stop to pick you. And so I have this philosophy, and so whenever I stand at a spot, of course, I always desire that as quickly as possible I get a ride. But my longest waiting time was 2 hours. And this was during the lockdown, and I couldn't believe it. And later I was sharing with someone, and he told me he is an European and he stood for 6 hours. Yes, his longest waiting time was 6 hours. I couldn't believe it, and I told him, well, I cannot stand there for... After 3 hours, I better find an alternative. So that is it. That is how it feels. And so the plan was to go to Brussels, and then I had an offer from Pastoor, and so I accepted this offer, and then I tried to find a possible means of traveling from Poland. We began discussions way back in April, when these traveling possibilities were limited. Then I needed to look for the most affordable way of traveling when the borders were open and I could travel. So I just found some travel connections to Aix-la-Chapelle, and then Pastoor came to pick me up, and I have been here for almost 2 weeks now, and so far so good.
So you're 2 weeks now, around 2 weeks in this part of the Netherlands.
Yes.
And how do you like this part of the Netherlands so far?
Well, I would rather say that I would rather generalize the whole thing, because I've not been to any other part of the Netherlands. But whatever I say about my experience here is a representative of my experience about Netherlands as a whole. Cases I'm interested in, more of people. And so I get more interested when I interact and engage with people, and I meet, almost every day I meet different kinds of people, and it's the best experience for me.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your story with us, and enjoy your time still traveling throughout Europe. Pastoor Notermans, niet iedereen neemt een backpacker of een traveler op in zijn huis. U wel. Ja, hoe bent u met hem in contact gekomen?
Ja, ik heb op de landelijke televisie al eens laten zien hoe groot dit huis is en dat er ruimte is voor een aantal logies. Nou, nu is er ook iemand. Tegenwoordig heb je via internet allemaal van die uitwisselingsplatforms, warm showers en be welcome en couchsurfing. En ik vind dat een heel leuke manier om met elkaar in contact te komen, omdat het allemaal hoort bij de deeleconomie. Je kunt heel gemakkelijk met een paar muisklikken een hotelkamertje boeken voor 40, 80 of 200 euro. Maar het leuke is om de beurzen gesloten te houden, zoals we dat nu ook doen. Iemand in huis te nemen die zelf meehelpt in de huishouding. Asante is heel ijverig met poetsen, met grote schoonmaken in huis. Onderhoud van de tuin. Mensen die de Kerkberg affietsen, die moeten hun ogen goed op de weg houden, want je weet niet wat je ziet nu alle onkruid hier weg is. En hij doet dat met heel veel overgave en heel veel enthousiasme. En het is ontzettend gezellig, samen aan tafel, samen dingen ondernemen. Omgekeerd heb ik dat zelf ook gedaan. Ik ben wel eens op een bioboerderij te gast geweest in Zwitserland, in de Zwitserse Alpen, waar alles volstrekt biologisch eraan toe gaat. Het was een heel andere manier van denken voor mij en een heel interessante kennismaking.
Is het de eerste keer dat u iemand in huis neemt?
Hier de tweede keer. In Strombroek heb ik ook wel vaker logies gehad. Het was toen bijvoorbeeld een groep wielrenners uit Wit-Rusland. Die hadden eerst de fiets op het vliegtuig gezet tot in München. En daarna zijn ze gaan fietsen van München naar Amsterdam. En dan lag Strombroek op de route.
En hoe is dat, zeg maar, als je iemand in huis neemt en ja, iedereen heeft het over corona en afstand houden en veel mogelijk, of ja, iedereen kapselt zich misschien een beetje in. Hoe is het dan om juist op dat moment iemand in huis te nemen?
Ja, het huis is groot genoeg om afstand te houden. We dragen geen mondkapjes. En voor de rest ben ik ook niet erg bang aangelegd, maar wel verstandig, redelijk wat verstand van mijn ouders meegekregen om natuurlijk goed met de maatregelen om te gaan.
Oké. Dankjewel. Nou, nog veel plezier samen hier.
Dankjewel.
Oké.
Heel goed.
Okay.
Na afloop van het interview merkte Asante op dat hij in Landgraaf heel goed opgevangen is. Maar op het moment dat het weer mogelijk is, hij heel graag door zou willen reizen naar Parijs.